Hello and welcome back to Football League World TV for the final show of the week. We've got the weekend preview where we're going to run through 6 EFL fixtures from across the Championship, League 1 and League 2. Joining me this afternoon is Marcus. Marcus, how are you getting on, mate?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Looking forward to the weekend. Lots of good fixtures to get stuck into in this show.
Absolutely. We've pinpointed 6 and we're going to kick-start off with the Championship. Quite hard to narrow the Championship down to just 3 fixtures this weekend, but we've managed to do that. And first up, we're going to talk about Stoke v Blackburn at the Bet365 Stadium. Stoke entering the weekend sitting 6th with Blackburn in 7th. Stoke, though, coming into this fixture on the back of a midweek defeat to Bristol City at Ashton Gate. Marcus, we expecting Michael O'Neill's side to bounce back this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. When you look at their home record, it's been so dominant this season, only losing to Bournemouth, of course. And I think there were plenty of positives to take out of the performance at Ashton Gate. Despite the defeat in the first half, they were definitely the team in the ascendancy when it's kind of a fleet deflection from a long throw that means Backinton's able to give Bristol City what turned out to be the only goal of the game. They'll be a little bit disappointed because it does sort of put them in this awkward position where they're looking at Blackburn, who are outside the playoff places and just 1 point behind them going into this weekend's action. And obviously, Joe Allen's sending off to go on the suspension list with Sam Surridge wasn't ideal towards the end in midweek. So I think Stoke have got the squad to cope with it, but it will be a big test, especially with the confidence that Blackburn built in thrashing Peterborough 4-0 in midweek as well.
Yeah, I think you're right there that Stoke in the first half in particular did look pretty good down at Ashton Gate. I only caught the first half before the remote control was wrestled from me, but they did look good. Michael O'Neill's been discussing sort of the how stretched his squad is at the minute. Are you slightly concerned by that, Marcus?
Not really. I think when we came into the season, I looked at Stoke and outside maybe the clubs with the parachute payments, they looked like they did have the biggest depth of quality in their squad. Like I Ben Wilmot coming in from Watford is now a player that amongst some defensive injuries, they might get an opportunity on Saturday. Obviously, Sawyer's come in. He's a player that's gone to the top of the pecking order, but it means that those established players have just fallen down it and could be ready to come in and take their place. I think Tyrese Campbell is getting up to speed with every match now. So I think there's definitely more positives looking forward into the attacking third. That might be something that Michael O'Neill will have to consider, just going more attacking because of what a big loss Harry Suter was a couple of weeks ago in the long term as well. So even though there's injuries that O'Neill's maybe looking to downplay expectations for, I think in terms of the personnel that they still have available, the Potters should be able to give a really good account of themselves against Mowbray's informed Rovers.
Absolutely. Any Stoke, Blackburn, or just general EFL fans joining us this afternoon, let us know your thoughts on the Stoke v Blackburn game and give us your score prediction. On to Blackburn, as you touched on earlier, Marcus, they got a really good victory in the week, 4-0 against Peterborough, with Ben Brereton Diaz, of course, on the score sheet again. 16 goals for the season. Now, quick word on Ben Brereton Diaz, Marcus.
Yeah, absolutely flying, isn't he? I did think that at some point his form would regress a touch. I think if it wasn't for Mitrovic just having the absolute joke of a season that he is, maybe we'd be talking about Brereton Diaz even more highly than we are. Yeah, he's just been relentless, really. And I don't think it's just his goal scoring touch. I think it's his all round game as well that's come on. In recent seasons, of course, he hadn't been that prolific. So it was his all round contribution to the team that was getting him picked in the side. So just to add the goals hasn't sort of taken away from that aspect of his game. If you take him out of the side, I don't think Rovers are anywhere near as strong and can be classed as maybe realistic playoff contenders. But while he's in the side, while he's fit and firing, they're going to be really dangerous.
Yeah, it's interesting with Brereton Diaz actually because he's not as much of an out-and-out number 9 as you might think, given his goal record. He likes to play in that little left channel that we used to see players like Thierry Henry used to play in. So he's a really interesting player to watch, and his goals speak for themselves. How do you think Stoke go about, combating his threat this weekend, Marcus?
Well, that is the problem. He can literally pull you all over the place with how flexible he is in that front three. Danny Batt and James Chester have been two of the recent back three for Stoke. I think that's two players with a lot of championship experience that might be able to at least plan or try and deal with the threat that Brereton Diaz poses. But of course, if he doesn't get you, there's plenty of other forwards that can rotate around and pick up some strange positions that could hurt Stoke at the weekend. But I do put sort of my expectations on those two, particularly Bat and Chester, to be able to deal with the threat that he poses, at least to better than Posh did in midweek anyway. Leo Ostigard, of course, will probably line up in the back three alongside those two, which is on the right side where you say Brereton Diaz is enjoying picking up possessions. It'll be interesting to see that individual battle. But I think there's enough leaders, enough organisers in that Stoke side to make sure they don't get overrun.
Absolutely. It's a big game, this one, 6v7. Let's get your prediction then, Marcus.
So I'm going 2-2. I was going to go 2-1 Stoke, but I think in terms of confidence levels, I think Blackburn are on a real high at the moment. They've really bounced back from that heavy defeat against Fulham. And on the flip side of that, I think Stoke, even though they played well, it would have been disheartening to go down at Bristol City, who of course had only won once at home in the league this season before this midweek. So I think Blackburn should be able to get something, but I think Stoke will put in a positive performance nonetheless.
Yeah, I was gonna sort of sit on the fence there as well, but I'm gonna go with a Blackburn away victory and Ben Brereton Diaz to do the damage. Elsewhere in the Championship on Saturday, Huddersfield host Middlesbrough at the John Smith Stadium. I'll be there for Football League World. Huddersfield currently sitting 8th in the table, whilst Middlesbrough down in 15th and under a new regime of Chris Wilder. Started with Huddersfield, 13 points from the last possible 15 at home. They're making the John Smiths a real fortress, aren't they, Marcus?
Absolutely, yeah. Along with Coventry City, they're the surprise packages of the season for me. Even Danny Ward up top's been a real handful so far this season. I didn't think I'd be saying that about him in 2021-22 campaign. But no, Huddersfield are really going from strength to strength. They demonstrated how good they were by beating West Brom. And I thought against QPR, they weren't, it was a narrow defeat against a team that's a really tough place to go in the Kyle Prince Foundation Stadium. So they can still take plenty from that match and take it into this one where Borough's confidence might have taken a little bit of a hit with their sort of conceding 2 late goals against Preston. Back onto Huddersfield, I think Lewis O'Brien's the man you've got to look to. He's really instrumental in the middle of the park. If they can hold on to him for the rest of the season, then I think they do have a chance of keeping playoff hopes alive right and towards the end of the campaign. Obviously, Josh Koroma and Danel Sinani as well have been contributing a bit more in recent weeks, lightening the load on the likes of Sorba Thomas, who was creating so much at the start of the season. So Huddersfield are looking really good at the moment. I think they should come in as rightful favourites against Borough.
Yeah, you're right to mention Lewis O'Brien there. He's carrying the captain's armband as well in Jonathan Hogg's extended absence. So, another string to his bow there. And this weekend, there's the possibility that Dwayne Holmes could come back into the Huddersfield side. And Sorba Thomas, having had a midweek rest, he was left on the bench at the start against Queen's Park Rangers. Would you be tempted to throw Thomas straight back in, Marcus?
If he's available, definitely. He's had such a big influence sort of in all facets of Huddersfield game this season, whether it's set pieces, whether it's arriving late or just creating chances himself. He's an outstanding player, one of the standouts so far this season anyway. So I think you can't really afford to leave him out, especially with the sort of replacements that are available. I don't think they're up to the same level. So if Corberán has the chance to play Thomas, I think he will.
Yeah, absolutely. On to Middlesbrough then. They're in the very early stages of the Chris Wilder era at the Riverside Stadium, but they've picked up just a point from his opening 2 fixtures in charge. We spoke to Corberán earlier in his press conference today, and he was sort of saying that he feels that you can see Wilder's style of play coming to fruition already at Middlesbrough. Do you sort of agree with that, Marcus, that we're seeing the Wilder blueprint on Middlesbrough at the minute?
A little bit. I think you can see with certain individuals that a difference is showing, but I think it will take a while for it to completely click for him. Obviously, when you compare it to the style of Neil Warnock, it is a complete sea change in that regard, tactically and stylistically. So I think it will take a little bit longer than some other managers have taken so far this season. But I think even though that it was a frustrating loss and it means only 1 point from 2 games against Preston in midweek, I think they produced a solid performance. Really, it's emotionally, it's really hard to take 2 late goals. You going into the closing exchanges of the match, hoping for a win, and you come away with nothing. That really is a tough one to take. But I think in terms of performance on the whole, I think they were able to limit Preston for large periods of the game. And despite the crushing result, when you take a step back, there are definitely positives to take from the performance.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing Paddy McNair and Lee Peltier, the overlapping centre-backs this weekend. Let's get your prediction then, Marcus. Huddersfield v Middlesbrough.
I'm going for a 1-1 draw. I was going to lean towards Huddersfield, but I just think Borough will have some kind of fighting spirit. I think Wilder would definitely be able to pick them up and get a reaction from the midweek loss. So I'm going 1-1.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with you there in a draw, but I'm gonna go 2-2. I'm fancying some goals and some Saturday entertainment for myself. Over to Sunday, we've got Sheffield United versus Bristol City in the Championship. Of course, Paul Heckingbottom's first game in charge, having been appointed as Sheffield United's new manager yesterday. Marcus, are we expecting Heckingbottom to make big changes in personnel or anything like that this weekend?
I think formation change would probably be the main area in terms of how much more he's going to get out of this group of players. I'm not so sure in the long run, but that was one big standout of what Jukanovic tried to implement. Was he was quite stubborn, sticking with a 4-2-3-1 amongst many other people, suggesting that the squad was more suited to a three at the back formation. Heckingbottom stuck with that at the back end of last season in the Premier League, so I'd expect him maybe to go back to that with having already worked with a large proportion of the squad as well. So I'd expect that to be the main change. Obviously, if for either side, it's an opportunity to break into the top half if they do win in this matchup. So it's kind of difficult because you don't want to read too much into that because of how close the teams are together in the Championship at the moment. But if in Heckingbottom's first game they are able to break into the top half, I think psychologically that would just be massive, and for the fan base as well. For the ball to try and get some people off their back. If they were to get a win here and just have them pushing in the right direction visibly by the table, reflecting it, then I think it's a huge opportunity and something that could completely change the whole outlook of what's gone on in the last few days.
Yeah, it's interesting, really. And I think that surely part of the thinking with Sheffield United appointing Heckingbottom is that he did get a tune out of these players last season in the Premier League, despite how poor Sheffield United were on the whole. I think they released in the statement, they underlined that he'd beaten the likes of Everton and Burnley. How important do you think it is that Heckingbottom starts on the front foot this Sunday in terms of the performance, but also a decent result, Marcus?
Yeah, I think he'll rely on the senior players to really set the tone, whether it be on the training ground or on Saturday. It's going to be a tough one. I think Bristol City have been slowly improving. Obviously, they've relied on their away form so much, which maybe leans them towards to put in another positive performance here. But it is a side that is there for the taking. And I think if the likes of McGoldrick and Sharp at the top of the pitch can produce some of the best that they've shown at the club in recent years, then they should be able to get a positive result.
Yeah, on to Bristol City then. I mean, we've touched on them beating Stoke earlier in the show. That was a good win in midweek. In terms of them facing Sheffield United, we're not really 100% sure what we're going to get from Heckingbottom Sheffield United. We've obviously had a taste of it last season in the Premier League. I just wondered your thoughts on whether this was an ideal fixture for Bristol City or it's one that they maybe wouldn't want to have with a new manager going in.
Well, I think we talk about how Sheffield United would want to start the game well. I think Bristol City will see that as a huge opportunity because I think there might be some unrest amongst the fan base. I expect a big crowd at Bramall Lane as well. So I think if City can make that turn early on in the match, maybe get the opening going inside the first 20 minutes or something like that, it will give them a real leg up towards holding on and getting a positive result. I think it's always a tricky one to judge whether it's harder to play a team with a new manager or not. Maybe if Heckingbottom hadn't been introduced and it was still just a caretaker after Jukanovic's sacking, you'd say maybe it's a bigger opportunity for Bristol City. But if Heckingbottom is able to really get a tune out of these players and sort of rally them towards the cause, then it probably does make it more difficult. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Nigel Pearson approaches it. It's an outstanding win on paper in midweek when you look how Stoke have performed this season. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think Bristol City should be able to definitely make it competitive, and they should be believing that they can go in and win the game.
What's your prediction then, Marcus?
So I'm sitting on the fence again with a 1-1 draw. I just think the mood around the ground isn't going to be too great, to be honest. I think the players have been consistently underperforming, Heckingbottom's been around the club even while this has been going on as well. So, I'm not too sure. I think Bristol City might edge in front, and maybe one of the high-profile players from the bench will be able to get the Blaze out of trouble. 1-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a narrow Sheffield United victory. I always seem to get a bit of late drama when I go to Bramall Lane, and I'll be there on Sunday, so I'm expecting something like a 97th minute winner and me having to rip up the match report or something like that. Right, anyway, let's get down into League One. So we're going to start across the Steel City with Sheffield Wednesday. They play Wycombe this weekend, which is obviously 5th going up against 2nd in League One. Sheffield Wednesday are on a long unbeaten run at the minute under Darren Moore, and there's been some really positive signs at Hillsborough that things are finally starting to click after relegation last season. Marcus, do you think that unbeaten run, despite the fact that they're playing 2nd in the table, makes them favourites this weekend?
I do actually, narrowly. I think it was huge for them to jump into 5th place with that late win in midweek, 2-1 against MK Dons. Josh Windass, a bit of a fairy tale, returned to the side, scoring a late winner. But I think Sheffield Wednesday have just slowly been building. We spoke maybe a few weeks ago about how they were dropping a lot of points and winning positions. They've been able to cut that out, and since then they've really shot up the league. Now they're inside the playoff places, have played a few more games than some of the teams around them. I think Darren Moore will be very confident of getting a positive result against a Wycombe side who are coming off the back of 2 wins without conceding a goal, and are definitely one of the maybe under the radar teams in the league, which we maybe shouldn't be talking about them like that, given they only came down from the Championship last season. But I think Wednesday do come in as favourites just for how well they've been playing, especially in the final thirds. If it wasn't for a Scott Twine thunderbolt, then they would have been even more comfortable against MK in midweek, who are a good side in themselves. So although they left it late, I think that was a very impressive victory.
Just sticking with Wednesday, I kind of feel that they've been hanging in there this season, sort of waiting to get Windass fit, because Windass, without doubt, is their best attacking player. And he obviously announced himself back into the side midweek against MK Dons with an assist and then a really tidy finish for the winning goal. Are you expecting him to come, into the starting 11 this weekend, having stepped off the bench midweek, Marcus?
I'm not so sure, given how well they're playing. I don't think there's any need to rush him back at all. And even with the shorter turnaround in between the midweek match and Saturday, I think that probably makes it less likely that he does come in from the start. It would have been a very emotional moment for him, a lot of adrenaline scoring that late goal. So I think he'll probably be introduced from the bench again here. And also, I think Wycombe have been so decent going forward in recent weeks, obviously beating Plymouth 3-0. In their last matchup, so Moore's got to be more wary of I think the rear guard action as well at Hillsborough this weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned there Wycombe absolutely thumped Plymouth midweek. That was a standout result in the midweek schedule. Mehmeti was on fire for them with 2 goals and an assist, and they tend to keep it tight in games like this against the sort of bigger hitters in League One. What do you think's a good result for Wycombe and Ainsworth this weekend, Marcus? Do you think it's 3 points, or do you think a point's good enough for them in second?
I think a point has to be a good result at Hillsborough for the majority of sides in League One this season. I don't think Wycombe get enough credit for really where they are in the table, even though they are a team that came down from the Championship last season. When we look at the squads, what the players have achieved in their careers to this point, and just the relative budgets, you look at Wednesday compared to Wycombe, it should be a real mismatch, but Wycombe are above them in the table and really going from strength to strength. They've done so well to keep Gareth Ainsworth at the club for so long. So I expect them to keep it tight. It's 3-1-4-2 formation matching up against each other, which seems to be a real formula for success in League One at the moment. You've got Plymouth, Rotherham and Charlton all adopting that formation as well as these two. So maybe in that regard, it could be quite an evenly matched encounter. But I think Wycombe, they'll be believing that they can win the game. Obviously, it's maybe added motivation to end Wednesday's 9-game unbeaten run in the league. But I think maybe if you offer Gareth Ainsworth a point now, he'd take it.
Come on then, let's get your prediction.
I'm going 2-1 Sheffield Wednesday. I just think there's a lot of good momentum building. It's a big squad for level, a lot of high-profile players, and you can't really measure the momentum that the late winner will give them going into back-to-back home games. So I'm going 2-1 Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm going with you there. A narrow home victory for me. I've gone 1-0. Next up, we're gonna discuss Charlton. Your side, Marcus. They travel to Shrewsbury, who sit 21st in the table. Charlton obviously 14th going into this weekend. 2 drop points in midweek, quite sloppy against Morecambe. Weren't Johnny Jackson's side. 2 drop points there. Plus, there's a few defensive absentees heading into this weekend for Jackson. Although, we're saying all this, they're coming up against a side in the relegation zone. Marcus, are you confident that this is another opportunity for Charlton to continue sort of climbing the League One table?
Definitely, yeah. I think Jackson speaking after the Plymouth game on last weekend kind of suggested that he wanted 6 points from these 2 games. Now he can only get a maximum of 4, but I think that will provide even more motivation to get over the line against Shrewsbury. I think you talk about the defensive absentees. I think that'll be an interesting selection dilemma he's got. But in terms of Jackson as caretaker manager, one of the things that maybe I wanted to see from a fan's point of view was how he'd be able to rally the troops after a disappointing result, just to prove his credentials even further to get in the job. He wasn't able to do that because we started so well in the first 5 games, 4 wins, 1 draw. Tuesday night was a disappointing result, particularly going 2 goals in front. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of reaction he can get in a match where I think Shrewsbury are one of the improving sides in the division. I think they will get themselves out of this rut eventually. Obviously, you held Sunderland in midweek as well. So they're no pushover, but I do expect Charlton to get back to winning ways, yeah.
What about Shrewsbury then? Let's just quickly touch on them. Any standout threats that you feel Charlton need to be concerned about this weekend?
Sam Cosgrove is a decent striker, and Ryan Bowman is always a handful. They're just a hard-working outfit. I think Steve Cottrell's really instilled that since he came in when they were struggling against relegation last season, and they should be proud of the point that they got against Sunderland, a goal down and a man down, with David Davis getting sent off in the first half. So to take a point from that match against a team of Sunderland's calibre is really impressive. They're still in touching distance of getting out of the relegation picture as well. So that just provides added motivation. And there was 2 draws between these sides last season as well. So they haven't lost to Charlton in quite a while. And even though the sort of Johnny Jackson revolution that's been going on, I still think they'll be able to take something.
Yeah, so, Charlton have shown how sort of not easy it is, but how doable it is to start climbing, the League One table quite quickly. And the man that's been key to doing that has been Johnny Jackson. He's obviously in caretaker charge at the minute. How long then, Marcus, before he gets offered the permanent job? Because he is doing a very good job at the minute at the Valley.
To be honest, I've got absolutely no idea. Thomas Sandgaard is at the game on Saturday, and then he flies back to America. So would have been to the last 3 games. That would maybe suggest that there'll be some kind of conversation at the end of it. Jackson was saying in midweek that he's optimistic. Wasn't really giving much away that there will be some kind of judgment resolved in the coming weeks. So it could be anything really. I think if Jackson wins at Shrewsbury, then you'd think it would be quite soon. But I thought after Plymouth, they probably would have got it. So it's difficult to predict what Sandgaard's going to do, to be honest. He waited so long to pull the trigger on Nigel Adkins, and it looks like he's doing the same with deciding who will eventually replace him.
Yeah, come on then, let's get some predictions.
I'm going 2-1 Charlton. I think the back 3 of probably Chris Gunter at the centre of it with Sean Clare and Akin Famewo. You've only got one specialist centre-back there. So I think Shrewsbury might be able to get on the score sheet. But Charlton, I think, will approach it in the right manner, won't be getting too down after the draw at Morecambe. So I think there's enough confidence in the squad and enough players with a point to prove to Jackson to give a good account of themselves and edge it 2-1.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm expecting Charlton to bounce back after the midweek disappointment. I've got 3-1 written down. Next up, we're going to look at League Two. So the game we're going to focus on down in the 4th tier is Swindon versus Harrogate, where 3rd hosts 6th. So quite a top of the, or not maybe not a top of the table clash, but a promotion, 2 promotion contenders going up against each other at Swindon. It's been 3 wins on the bounce for Ben Garner's Swindon side, and goals coming from all over the pitch, which is always a good sign. Marcus, are you fancying them to make home advantage count this weekend?
Yeah, having said that, they have been better on the road this season considerably. I think it's only 2 home wins in the league for Swindon Town so far. But when you look at the squad, it's one of those nice sort of build of a squad in the summer where it sort of all came in late, but there was a good a good feeling around it, considering how the club sort of got off a dangerous footing off the pitch, and it's the sort of size of the squad as well, where you feel like each player has a lot of responsibility. So easy to keep every player happy with game time. And also there's enough quality that they can really hurt teams, particularly in the final third. So Ben Garner's doing a great job. It looked like a bit of a poison chalice when he took it on. But now you've got to say that the Robins are one of the best sides in League Two this season. I think Harrogate, with the inconsistencies we've seen from them, Swindon definitely come in as rightful favourites.
Absolutely. As for Harrogate, they're a little bit hit and miss at the moment in League Two, but they've got some very dangerous players. They've got players that can score goals all over the pitch. Who do you feel could do the damage for Harrogate this weekend, Marcus?
There's lots of names, as you say. I'm definitely expecting goals in this game. You've got Alex Patterson, scored 6 goals from central midfield this season. You've got Jack Diamond on loan from Sunderland, a player that can really unlock a defence, still just 21 years old. And then Jack Muldoon and Luke Armstrong up top have got a combined 15 league goals so far this season. So, Harrogate aren't shy of a high-scoring game. Neither are Swindon. So I think that could be a good recipe for this encounter.
Come on then, it sounds like it's going to be an exciting prediction. What are you going for, Marcus?
I'm going 3-2. Bit of a ding-dong battle, but I think Swindon can make it 4 wins in 4. That doesn't often happen in League Two. It's so evenly matched. If you can get a 4-match win streak in a over the course of a season, that is really impressive stuff. But they are just going from strength to strength at the moment. I think Johnny Williams is definitely a player of the ability that shouldn't really be in the 4th tier. I think he could be the difference.
Yeah, I'm going to sit on the fence here. I'm going to go for goals again, but I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm going to go 2-2. Right, that concludes Football League World TV's weekend preview. And it concludes another week on Football League World TV. If you are watching back on YouTube, like the video, get in the comments and let us know if you're going to a game and give us a prediction. We'll make sure that we come back to you with a reply. Thanks to Marcus for joining me and anybody that's joined us throughout the course of the week. Until next week, take care.